Hi, everybody. I am not Dawn Laporte. I am Jennifer Weiss, and apparently our video uploading has been a bit of a challenge. So I would like to welcome everybody to the Women in Orthopedics Worldwide Symposium. And I'm really excited for these presentations. So this is a consortium of some new groups that are popping up around the globe. And representing the Black Women of Orthopedic Surgery is Dr. Gabriella Ode from Greenville, South Carolina, and she's going to tell us about their group, and really excited to hear it. So thank you for coming on up.
Hi, thank you everyone. So I'm presenting on behalf of Ide Brown, who's the president of Black Women in Orthopedic Surgeons. And my talk is going to be on intersectionality and orthopedics. And I have nothing to disclose. So intersectionality is a growing area of social science research related to discrimination. The term intersectionality was first coined by Crenshaw in 1989 to describe how the exclusion of women of color from prominence in both the feminist movements and the civil rights movements rendered its dual identities as women and persons of color invisible. It specifically addresses the manner in which racism, gender, power dynamics, and other discriminatory systems contribute to create layers of inequality and oppression. And as Black women orthopedic surgeons, our intersectionality frames our experience personally and professionally. As Crenshaw astutely pointed out, because the intersectional experience is greater than the sum of racism and sexism, any analysis that does not take into consideration intersectionality cannot sufficiently address the particular manner in which Black women are subordinated. So briefly, let's look at the numbers in medicine. Currently, 39% of full-time medical faculty are female. However, only 4% of full-time faculty identified as underrepresented minorities in medicine. That stark racial and ethnic disparity among full-time faculty is mirrored at the department chair level, where women of color represent only 3% of department chairs in academic medicine. And it's more stark in surgery, where less than 1% of medical school faculty are Black women, and before 2020 there were no Black women chairs in surgery. And when we compare the demographics of the US population to those who become surgical residents and surgical faculty, there is substantial overrepresentation of white men in surgery and substantial underrepresentation of women of color. That dichotomy of overrepresentation and underrepresentation is most glaring in orthopedic surgery, where white men make up greater than 60% of academic faculty, while Black women and other women of color each represent less than 1% and are therefore hyper-marginalized. And while there has been more literature coming out that describes the low numbers of women or minorities in orthopedic surgery, there's little literature describing the underrepresentation of women of color in orthopedics, and not enough literature evaluating the reasons why. So how does extreme underrepresentation contribute to the leaky pipeline for women and minorities in orthopedics? To answer that, the conversation needs to shift to the challenges faced by women of color in orthopedic surgery, and those challenges include finding the door, getting through the door, and then once through it, finding an inclusive and equitable environment on the other side. And in many ways, that's reminded me of a passage in Lewis Carroll's book, Alice in Wonderland. At one point, Alice is faced with a door that she has a key for, but that appears to be too small for her to fit. From a gender perspective, studies have shown that the greatest deterrent for female medical students pursuing a surgery residency is not family concerns or lifestyle concerns, but the perception of surgery as an old boys club. A more recent study echoes the appearance of male dominance in surgery, as well as the culture within the surgical work environment, which were listed as major deterrents for pursuing surgery. And from a racial perspective, orthopedic surgery remains one of the least diverse medical specialties in terms of racial representation. And the reasons for that are multifactorial, but likely include outside discouragement regarding difficulty in matching, competitiveness, lack of fit in orthopedic surgery, as well as inherent biases in the medical school performance criteria, lack of early exposure and mentorship, and implicit and unconscious bias. And furthermore, stereotyping of orthopedic surgeons perpetuates a culture in medicine that subconsciously provides positive reinforcement and a sense of belonging for those who embody that stereotype, and negative reinforcement for those who do not. So the next challenge is getting through the door. Dr. Poon's studies have shown that minority applicants are accepted into orthopedics at significantly lower rates than white applicants, and that holds even after controlling for academic metrics such as board scores, volunteer and research experience, and AAOS status. Then when you account for the aspect of human nature that fosters an affinity towards those who look like ourselves or remind us of ourselves, simple math would tell us that the dichotomy of overrepresentation of white men and underrepresentation of black and other minority women will continue in perpetuity without strategic intervention by those who make up the majority. And then lastly, women of color face challenges related to finding an inclusive and equitable environment once through the door. In my opinion, diversity for diversity's sake, without incorporation of equity and inclusion, is a setup for failure, because it ultimately threatens the well-being of the diverse individual, which may contribute to burnout and attrition. And these are real threats. A study of workplace experiences in academic science found that women of color are more likely to feel unsafe in the workplace as a result of both their gender and race. They were more likely to feel unsafe as a result of their race more frequently than men of color, white men, or white women. And women of color are more likely to experience verbal racial harassment, and equally as likely as white women to experience verbal sexual harassment. One of the results of our publications in JAOS on practicing black orthopedic surgeons on the experiences with race and intersectional discrimination found that black women reported all types of measured racial microaggressions at higher rates than black men, and that black female orthopedic surgeons reported lower perceived occupational opportunity than black males on all 16 posed questions, and this difference was statistically significant on 9 of those 16 items. And then when solicited for comments in the workplace experience, black women offered statements like, "It takes more effort overall to show up to work as a black female orthopedic surgeon because you're also trying to combat assumptions made about you. I was not viewed as equal." Or, "I was never so acutely aware of my existence in society as a black woman until I became an orthopedic surgeon. Being a race and gender ambassador in orthopedic surgery is exhausting, and no one outside of this identity can truly relate." So that sentiment that no one can truly relate is echoed in a study in general surgery in which minority women surgery residents were less likely to agree that they had someone in their program available to talk to you about experienced discrimination, and that actions would be taken to prevent recurrence of reported incidences. In a new study that we're currently working on that surveys the experience of black orthopedic surgeons during residency training, we found that black women had significantly higher perceived occupational discrimination in residency than black men. Black women reported higher rates of racial microaggressions in residency than black men, with 2/3 receiving racially explicit statements directed towards them in the workplace, and 100% of black women have been mistaken for non-physician medical staff, such as a nurse or a PA in residency. And among the perpetrators of racially explicit statements, black women were significantly more likely to report receiving them from attending faculty in residency. And black women in orthopedics were significantly higher rates of receiving derogatory statements or non-inclusive remarks from their superiors, which includes saying they did not fit at their program, or they matched their program culture, that they matched their program to fit a diversity quota, that they had inferior communication skills compared to their peers, inferior surgical skills, or were more unfriendly compared to their peers. And black women were significantly more likely to report receiving negative informal feedback from their superiors during orthopedic residency than black men. So why does the recognition of intersectionality in orthopedics matter? Because we must hold the door open. We know that early exposure to orthopedic surgery fosters more interest in the field, particularly amongst minority and women. On a broader scale, increasing the diversity of orthopedic faculty has downstream implications, with greater URM faculty representation leading to higher likelihood that a URM student will apply to orthopedics, and the same applies for gender. It's also imperative that our patients and our peers understand what we contribute to the field of orthopedic surgery. That includes recognizing the perspective that we bring as teachers, mentors, and advocates to both majority and minority residents, and recognizing our role as physician scientists, as patient advocates, and as role models. With intersectionality, what we want to celebrate is that we are expanding the number of black women in orthopedic surgery. We are headed in the right direction. But it is not only important that they have matched, it is key to nurture, mentor, and embrace their intersectionality. And with accountability, they are more than photos and more than numbers. Ultimately, recognition of intersectionality is important to increase representation of diversity in orthopedics, but that is not enough. Diversity has little value without equity and inclusion. The true value lies in accountability, and true incorporation without discrimination is critical to our progress as a subspecialty. Ultimately, we must ensure that women of color in orthopedics always have a seat at the table. Thank you.
So while we're shifting speakers, I just want to recognize that I'm had Dr. Ode next to me in the communications, then cabinet, now committee, for quite a while. And Dr. Ode began as a resident and was the resident expert on so much regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And to see you standing here in your maturity is really amazing. And thank you for teaching me so much over the years. The Black Women of Orthopedic Surgery, Dr. Ode Brown, for those of you who have not had the pleasure of getting to meet her, is incredible. And she's at home in Harlem taking care of patients and can't be here now. But thank you for representing so well.